There are deaths that happen in an instant and others that are a slow and painful bleeding out in front of everyone. Warner Bros.' death belongs to the second group. What was once Hollywood's golden standard, the home of Batman, Harry Potter, and The Sopranos, is now a mortally wounded giant, so burdened by debt that its executives are basically selling off the furniture to pay the bills. And on the horizon, the Wolf of Wall Street, disguised as the Red N, Netflix, is sharpening its knives to snatch up the remains. This isn't just a financial story, it's the chronicle of a corporate suicide foretold. In the last 3 years, since the catastrophic merger with Discovery, Warner Bros. Discovery stock has plummeted by more than 60%. The company is dragging a debt that exceeds $40 billion, a figure so absurd it seems taken from the defense budget of a small country. This isn't just a bump in the road, it's a structural collapse. But how did we get here? How did a studio that defined popular culture for a century end up in this luxury garage sale? The answer doesn't lie in a single decision, but in a chain of monumental mistakes, a symphony of mismanagement. Today, we're going to break down the 5 acts of this corporate Greek tragedy. 5 fatal errors that explain not only why Warner is falling, but why its downfall is a lesson for anyone who thinks a brand is indestructible. The first nail in the coffin wasn't hammered in by a Hollywood executive, but by a phone company. We have to talk about the original sin, AT&T's purchase. In 2018, the telecommunications giant paid $85 billion for Time Warner. On paper, the idea was to create synergies. The content creator and the content distributor united in a match made in heaven. In practice, it was as if a plumber bought a restaurant with 3 Michelin stars. AT&T didn't understand the business of art. To them, a movie wasn't a cultural work. It was content, a simple commodity to fill their fiber optic and mobile data pipelines. They failed to integrate the divisions, didn't respect the creative culture, and most importantly, saddled the company with monumental debt. AT&T treated Warner like that ridiculously expensive piece of furniture you buy on impulse at an auction, only to realize later that it doesn't fit in your living room. In the end, you leave it in the garage gathering dust, and in this case, racking up billions in interest. This debt was the ticking time bomb left for the next person in line, and the ticking was becoming deafening. And then the savior arrived, or so we were told. David Zaslav, the CEO of Discovery, landed with promises of efficiency and profitability. But his version of efficiency turned out to be more like a chainsaw in an art gallery. That's how we entered the era of content cannibalism. Zaslav's logic, forged in the world of low-cost reality shows, was simple. Cut, cut, and cut. His most infamous move was the cancellation of the Batgirl movie, a $90 million production that was already finished. He didn't cancel it because it was bad, but because fiscally, it was more profitable to use it as a tax write-off than to release it. Imagine spending years of your life creating something, only for an accountant to decide that your art is worth more as a negative number on a spreadsheet. It was a slap in the face to creators and fans, a sign that nothing was sacred. But it was only the beginning. They began quietly removing series and movies from the HBO Max library, including gems like Westworld, to save on residual payments to actors and writers. From a marketing and consumer psychology perspective, this was a catastrophic disaster. The value of a streaming platform lies in the trust that the content will be there. By removing it, they told the public, don't get attached to anything, because it could disappear tomorrow just to save a few cents. It was as if a library decided to burn its own books to save on shelving costs. Technically, it's a saving, but maybe you've lost sight of the main goal of the business. But if you thought that deleting content was their most baffling decision, wait until we talk about the suicide of a perfect brand. Warner Bros. Owned the most prestigious asset of the streaming era, HBO. The initials HBO were synonymous with quality, auteur television, excellence. It was the brand that brought you Game of Thrones, Chernobyl, Succession. It was the main reason people paid for the subscription. And what did they do with this crown jewel? They took away its name. In a marketing act of madness, which is still studied in business schools as an example of what not to do, they decided to merge HBO Max with Discovery's reality show catalog and rebrand everything as Max. Simply Max. They threw away decades of brand building, prestige, and consumer trust for a generic name that sounds like a men's deodorant. The logic was, supposedly, not to intimidate new subscribers who just wanted to watch Gold Rush. It was as if Ferrari decided to change its name to Vehicle with Wheels so as not to scare off people who ride bicycles. The result was a total dilution of the premium brand, confusion in the market, and widespread mockery. They devalued their most valuable asset in a clumsy attempt to be everything to everyone, and ended up being something undefined for no one. While the company was bleeding value and reputation, there was a parallel universe where things were suspiciously going well: the CEO's bank account. This brings us to the profound disconnect between the reality of the company and the compensation of its executives. While hundreds of employees were being laid off, projects were being cancelled, and the stock was plummeting. David Zaslav was pocketing astronomical compensation packages. In 2024, his salary and bonuses approached $52 million. Let's compare this with Netflix, whose co-CEO earned a similar amount, but with one small difference. Netflix generated nearly $9 billion in profits that year, while Warner Bros. Discovery lost more than $11 billion. The company hasn't reported a single quarter of net profit since the merger. Even the shareholders rebelled, voting against his pay package in a public humiliation. Although the board of directors, filled with his friends, can ignore that vote. Psychologically, this is devastating. It tells the world, the employees, and the investors that the top management lives in a reality completely isolated from the consequences of their decisions. It's like the captain of the Titanic who, while the ship is sinking, awards himself a bonus for successfully reducing the ship's weight by getting rid of the lifeboats. This disconnect not only demoralizes the team, but also fuels the public perception that the company is a vehicle for personal enrichment, not a creative engine. And so we come to the final act, the fire sale. With the brand damaged, the catalog depleted, and morale at rock bottom, Zaslav's strategy became clear. The goal was never to fix the company, but to prepare it to be sold. Recently, they announced their plan to split the company in two. On one side, the movie studio, the intellectual property, DC, Harry Potter, etc., and the streaming platform, Max. On the other side, the traditional cable channels like CNN and Discovery Channel, which are clearly in decline. Officially, they say it's to unlock value for shareholders. The real translation is that they're isolating the toxic assets. They're separating the rusty engine and the flat tires from the shiny chassis so the car looks more appealing to the buyer. It's a financial engineering move, not a long-term vision. They're admitting that they can't manage the business as a whole, so they break it up so that someone bigger can take the good parts. They're selling the house, but first they remove the leaky pipes and the rotten roof and offer that as a separate lot with rustic potential. The buyer, whether it's Netflix or anyone else, only wants the pretty facade, the pool, and the family jewels that are left inside. It's the ultimate admission of failure, the last step before handing over the keys. What we're witnessing is more than just the fall of a studio. It's a warning. It's the story of how a legendary creative culture was devoured by short-term financial logic. Warner Bros. Isn't dying because people stopped loving movies or great series. It's dying because it was handed over to people who see art as just a line on a spreadsheet and a century-old legacy as something to be monetized, squeezed dry, and discarded. Now, the question that hangs in the air is, what will happen to Batman, to Hogwarts, and to Middle-earth when they fall into the hands of Netflix's algorithm? Will the DC universe become a factory for generic content optimized for completion rates? Is this the end of an era for Hollywood? If you found the story of how a giant like Warner can fall due to corporate decisions fascinating, it's because it's just one piece of a much larger puzzle. What is happening to Warner is a symptom of a disease that affects the entire industry. And that's exactly what I talk about in my analysis of the fall of Hollywood, where we explore whether we're witnessing the end of an era for film and television as we know them. I'll leave it right here on the screen for you, because believe me, it's the perfect and necessary follow-up to understand the full picture.